Dancing with Trees by Frida Duplessis. Joshua was born with a hole in his heart. He had had many operations over the course of his 8 years. Now he was in hospital for yet another one. He was scared. At 9:30 p.m., Joshua had finished his dinner and received his pain medication. Feeling drowsy from the meds, he drifted off to sleep. His op was scheduled for the following day. Joshua woke to a tapping sound on a window. He opened his eyes and looked around. Across from his bed was a large window that hadn't been there before. An owl was knocking on the window with its beak. Tap, 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 he heard. He curiously watched the owl. The owl curiously watched back. I must be dreaming, he thought. He pinched himself. Ouch! It's not a dream. He sensed that the owl was trying to tell him something, but what? He watched the owl for a while longer, and then suddenly he felt his legs start to move by themselves, almost like they had a mind of their own. Then they slowly shifted from under the covers. One after the other, they moved to the edge of the bed and then dropped over the side. Joshua was now sitting on the edge of his bed, frightened and confused. The next thing he knew, he was standing next to his bed. He looked down to see his one foot placed in front of the other, like they were being moved by some kind of magic. When he reached the window, the owl turned its head 180 degrees. Joshua followed the owl's glance to the garden below. There, in the middle of an open patch of lawn, was the tallest maple tree that Joshua had ever seen. In front of the tree was a little boy about the same age as Joshua. The boy put his one arm across his stomach and bowed to the tree. What happened next was truly amazing. The wind started to pick up, and after a few minutes was blowing so hard that the maple tree bowed to the boy. It put one of its branches across its trunk, and the top of the tree bent forward as far as it could. This is how the dance starts, each one bowing to the other to show their respect. The wind died down to little more than a gentle breeze. Both the boy and the tree started to move in perfect synchronization with one another. The boy stretched his arms out to his sides and started to sway gently from side to side. The boy's fingers then began to move in harmony with the gently fluttering leaves of the maple tree. His arms followed. Now he added a to and fro movement, alternating between the one and the other. At times he would raise his arms above his head and move them in circles. The tree would do the same. It isn't known if the tree was following the boy's movements or the boy the tree's. And what about the wind? Did the tree call on the wind to create the dance? Or did the wind call on the tree to do the dance? No one knew. As the dance went on, animals started to gather. Birds, squirrels, raccoons, rabbits, and many others. They swayed to and fro and clapped their paws, wings, and ears with joy at the show they were witnessing. Then they all started to whistle like the wind. When the dance was finished, the boy and the tree bowed to each other, and then to the crowd of animals that had gathered. And then they bowed to Joshua. The young boy then hugged the tree. The large maple tree wrapped its branches around the boy, and with that the boy disappeared. Magically, Joshua was back in his bed and fell into a deep and painless sleep. The next morning, Joshua woke up feeling happy and unafraid of the operation he was about to have. His mom was there, and so was the nurse that he was very fond of. While his mom was talking to the doctor outside his room, Joshua told the nurse about his dream. It wasn't a dream, she said. It was real. You see, whenever a child is in hospital and in need of comfort, the trees outside dance for the boy or girl to take away their pain and their fear. Where did the little boy go? Joshua asked. He just disappeared. He is the spirit of the tree, said the nurse. When the dance is done, he goes back into the tree. All trees are alive and have spirits. In fact, every tree and plant is alive. Even the sky, the water, and the earth is alive. Not like us, because they don't need the things that we do to survive, and they don't need to travel to get what they need. It comes to them. Just like the wind came when the tree wanted to dance, the rain comes when the tree is thirsty, and the sun shines so that it can grow. Joshua smiled at the nurse and said matter-of-factly, I know they're alive. I saw one dance last night. A little while later, the orderlies came in to wheel Joshua into the operating theatre. The operation was a long one that took most of the day. It was already night time when the doctor finally came out to tell Joshua's mom that he didn't make it. Unfortunately, Joshua passed away during the operation. His mom was beside herself with grief. The doctors and nurses could not console her. She went to Joshua's room, sat beside his empty bed and wept. After hours of crying, she folded her arms and placed them on Joshua's bed. She then put her head on her arms and fell asleep. She woke to a tapping sound on a window. She opened her eyes and looked around. Across from Joshua's bed was a large window that hadn't been there before. An owl was knocking on the window with its beak. Tap, 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 she heard. She curiously watched the owl. The owl curiously watched back. I must be dreaming, she thought. She pinched herself. Ouch! It's not a dream. She slowly made her way to the window and followed the owl's glance to the garden below. There, in the middle of an open patch of lawn, was the tallest maple tree that she'd ever seen. In front of the tree was a little boy. The boy put his one arm across his stomach and bowed to the tree, and the tree did likewise. The tree and the boy danced like the night before, and Joshua's mom watched with tears running down her face. The boy looked just like Joshua. The boy was laughing and dancing and whistling. He was happy. The boy then turned to face Joshua's mom. Joshua's mom's face turned snow white and her jaw dropped. She stared in disbelief at the boy. It was Joshua. Look, Mom, I'm dancing, he yelled. I love you, he continued as he waved his arms. The tree shook its branches to mimic Joshua's frantic waves. Joshua's mom put her hands on her face and tears came streaming down. She stood there frozen, trying to make sense of what she was witnessing. Then a warm, comforting feeling swept over her. It felt a bit like when on a cold night you put your warm pajamas on that had just come out of the dryer. She smiled and started to sway from side to side and move her arms up and down like she was flying. Soon she too was dancing and laughing and crying. Much later, she woke up on Joshua's bed, her sorrow now joy, knowing her son is safe and happy in the next life. She vowed to tell this story of dancing with trees to as many sick children and grieving parents as she could. Sometimes on a full moon night, She would go into the forest and patiently wait for the wind to pick up. And then she would dance with the trees. The end.